Hello everyone, this is James Hooper with CCN, Cook County News, and we are in Gainesville, Texas at the Gainesville City Police Department, and here we have today is Chief Kevin Phillips. Now today, Kevin Phillips, the chief himself, is going to have a very special awareness message that all of you need to know. As of the moment, he's a little busy. Give him just a moment.
Apologize for that.
That's okay. Hey, that just demonstrates that to everybody that you are on top of your job. Chief Phillips, how do you explain the rise in theft for the holidays?
The holidays, while for the average person, for the general community, it's a special time of year where you get to spend time with family and friends and come together. It's also a time where we're busier than normal. So because of that, we may, and also we're away from home more often. So and because we're busy, sometimes we may be a little more careless than we might normally be. And so unfortunately, that makes us, as a community, we're more vulnerable to theft and other crimes because there are people out there that choose to take advantage of those opportunities.
Now, when you say vulnerable, does that also include the police department's vulnerability as far as possibly being short-staffed and versus you need to bring in some reserves for the holidays to help you out?
Our staffing level, we're fortunate in that right now we're fully staffed with the exception of one position, so we're doing well in that aspect. But if the call load goes up, obviously that means if we're answering a call, that means that officer's not on the street patrolling. So when call loads go up, we are unable to spend as much time in just basically preventive patrol as we could be.
What type of restraints do y'all deal with whenever y'all are versus call logs against with, say, for example, just your random walk-up that's saying, hey, there's a theft going on? What type of restraints do y'all deal with right there? Does it interfere with your overall logistics for communications and highway? I mean, can you give some insight to the community on how that works? What type of strain do y'all are going under, so to speak?
Obviously, when we, like I said, kind of relates back to the last response, but when we take additional calls, whether it be the retailer calling because they've had a shoplifting incident, or whether it be a homeowner who's had a theft at their house or even a burglary of their vehicle, those calls obviously take our focus and take our time away from other duties, preventive patrol or traffic. Obviously, traffic typically increases this time of year. We really haven't seen how the current pandemic is going to impact our traffic patterns this holiday season. So I think there will be some impact, although I still think there will be a lot of people traveling. So we try to keep our officers aware and focusing on the roads because traffic safety is obviously a big part of our responsibility too.
Well, I'm glad you brought up traffic because the community, they're obviously going to travel. And of course, you've already heard about the recent announcements with the government wanting to restrict holiday housing from gatherings and stuff like that to a specific number. If our citizens wanted to travel regardless, how would you per se give them some advice on what to do with their vehicles when they're on the road, whether they're parking in a parking lot, at a gas station, a store, or even at their loved one's house for the holidays?
Well, first and foremost, when you park your vehicle, wherever it may be, it's just imperative that you keep it locked. I'm not going to say that we never have burglaries of vehicles where someone actually forces entry, because it does happen from time to time. But typically, burglary of a vehicle is a crime of opportunity, and they are looking for vehicles that are unlocked. Obviously, you make less noise that way. The suspects can be in and out of the car much more quickly. So that's first and foremost. Lock your car, please. Hide your valuables. If you've been shopping or if you're traveling to to a family or friend's home for whether it be a Thanksgiving or Christmas gathering, and you have gifts, packages, whatever it may be in the back of the car, and where it's visible, put those items in the trunk, or keep them covered. Just keep them concealed on top of keeping the car locked. If there are enough packages or what appears to be enough valuables in a car, then you're going to increase that risk of someone, maybe going the next step and possibly forcing entry into a vehicle to gain access to those items. So very important, keep it locked, keep your valuables out of the way. If possible, take them out. Obviously, and when I'm things like that, cameras, purses, cell phones, don't leave those things laying out, especially those things, like I said, that you can carry with you. That way they're not even in the vehicle. Another key point, especially if it's dusk or dark, try to park in well-lit areas. That just helps reduce the target, the probability that your vehicle might be targeted.
Are there any specific item indicators that a thief would look for? Like, for example, a car charger. It could be anything. Does that send a message to that projected thief, hey, there's a possibility of something else in here because of that one particular item they seen?
It could. I think probably in years past that would have been more so the case. I think the prevalence of cell phones now, there's an awareness that there's the possibility of a cell phone being in the vehicle. But obviously, if there's a charger there, it's obvious that person does own a cell phone. So if you can put those things up, that's good as well. Especially the ones that may have a light on them, because especially if it's dark. That just draws that attention. Hey, there's something lit there. If they can't see the end of the cord, they might suspect that the phone is attached to the charger and under the seat or in the glove box. So that might pique their interest and want them to, or cause them to enter the vehicle. Or once again, as everyone's aware, the prices of cell phones have increased dramatically over the past several years. So a cell phone is no longer an inexpensive item. Many of them are worth over $1,000 now. So that's an item of value that they will go to some trouble to try to gain access to.
And what would you say to citizens that are shopping? So from the time they get out of that vehicle and say they do take all their belongings with them and whatnot, is there a way that you can hide a certain demeanor about yourself to help protect and conceal the stuff that you have, that's your own personal belongings? So that way, the well-known groups, obviously, that orchestrate every year in teams, so that way they can't see them or it throws off their track.
One of the things that we recommend for the shopping, shop during daylight when you can. Realize, if depending on your work schedule, that may not be possible, but if you can, shop during the daylight hours. If you must shop at night, then take a family or a family member or friend with you. Obviously, it's always better to travel in groups. And as far as going to, how to kind of maybe conceal some of those items, dress casually, comfortably. I know most people don't really get dressed up to go shopping, but if you do that, you're drawing attention, especially if you're wearing, a lot of jewelry. That might be another indicator that might draw someone's attention. We don't see that problem, and fortunately, knock on wood, we don't really have that problem in Gainesville. We're still a fairly small rural community, but realizing that a lot of people leave our community and go to some of the larger communities to go shopping, wearing a lot of jewelry or something like that is definitely going to draw attention to yourself. If you can get away with it, we recommend to people, don't carry a purse or a wallet. If you can condense your items down to something that you can keep in your pocket, that's much better. That's one less thing to draw someone's attention, and one less thing for someone maybe to try to grab a hold of and take away from you. Try to carry, obviously. And when we talk about breaking it down, you can carry your driver's license, carry credit cards, those kinds of things. And we go back to that people being busy during this time of year, and you may be thinking about 1,000 different things, but be aware of your surroundings. I mean, that's really crucial. Pay attention to the things around you, and because it's just easy to get focused on what you're doing and to kind of become oblivious to those things that are going on. And situational awareness is key in personal safety at all levels, not just during the shopping time of year, but all the time. Just a good situational awareness. Unless you have some specific need or requirement, don't carry large amounts of cash. If once again, using with the advent of debit cards, most people have access to their checking accounts electronically. So there's really not a need unless you're going to a specific place where you have to take cash or you're making some type of special purchase. But as far as walking around with and pulling out of your pocket a large wad of cash, once again, that's something you should avoid if at all possible. All you're doing is drawing attention to yourself, possibly if someone happens to be watching for that type of target. We also see lost, stolen credit cards. Let's say, for whatever reason they did get in your vehicle, or and we get these calls several times, especially during the holiday season. People forget their credit cards. They'll leave them in the machine, or they laid them down. They've misplaced their credit card. As soon as you find out you've misplaced it, or even if you think you've misplaced it, call the credit card company and cancel those credit cards. Stop anyone from being able to use that. It's pretty simple for them to replace them nowadays, and typically there's not any charge with that. So as soon as you think you've got one lost or stolen, be sure and contact those credit card companies. And we've seen the people walking out of the stores with their arms just full of packages, almost to the point where they can't even see over the packages. Once again, that cuts down your situational awareness. Use a cart or make more trips to your car, whatever you're going to do. Once again, if you're going to do that, be sure and secure those items in your trunk where they're not visible. But try not to be walking out with so many items that drawing attention to yourself. Again, try to add a little security there, and be aware if you see a stranger approaching you. By going back to that situational awareness, if you see someone approaching you, you should be hesitant of that, be cognizant, and if you're concerned, if something seems like it's not right, you should pay attention to that. And if you're at a mall and they have security, ask a security guard. A lot of times they'll have roaming patrols as well. Have them escort you to your car. If you're in let's say it's an area where they don't have that, you can always call for the police, and if they've got a unit available, they can come by. But just pay attention to your surroundings. If you see something that is suspicious, call someone and ask for an escort or something like that.
Wonderful. Well, that covers pretty much a majority of your mobile theft. Now, what would you say as far as your more home front and permanent primary address theft? How would you be able to address the awareness on citizens to better arm their property?
Obviously, and this goes back to almost an overall security all the time. Not even just the holiday season, but lighting's always good. The relative inexpensive cost of cameras now is somewhat of a deterrent. You have cameras up where people know they're being recorded. So those are both good things that people should probably be considering all the time. But as far as the holiday season, a lot of people like to showcase their Christmas trees, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people should be, have their. Once again, it's a time of year for us to enjoy it. We don't need to be so concerned with everything that we're fearful of showing those things. Now, so the Christmas trees out there, what might not be good is to go ahead and put all the packages around it where it's visible. Especially you have a large window in front of the home. Someone can walk up to the door and they can see the tree and they can see the base of the tree, and you've got all these packages. That could become a target. So just pay attention to that. Maybe you package those the presents and they stay off to the side where they're not visible through the window. We go back to that. Being distracted, busy, and so sometimes people just think they're going to run out of the house for a few minutes, and they might leave the house unlocked. So it's very important to remember to lock your house. The same thing as the car. Don't leave your home unlocked at any time, especially during this time of year. Someone knocks on the door. They don't get an answer. They see the Christmas tree. They see all the packages, and they check the doorknob, and it's open. And that's really going to be inviting to someone who's looking to at least target that kind of what they have right there. As far as if you leave and go on trips, be sure and have your mail stopped or have a neighbor picking that up. Typically, here we don't have a lot of newspaper delivery, like you do in the Metroplex where you have the large newspapers being delivered. But if you do, be sure those are being picked up or stopped. Any type of circulars that could be visible and look like you're not home. The ease of having lights that kind of they're programmed where they come on and off at different times. That's a really good thing. Leaving music playing or leaving a TV on where people hear noise if they're coming to your door. Those are both really good things as well. Anything to disrupt what just looks like a very stagnant scene. That way they know that they just don't know what to expect. They don't know when someone's coming or going. Other than that, can't really think of anything else right there.
Well, let's put a worst case scenario. What would happen per se if you were to get that particular call that was going to turn for the worst? Then what is your response to that? How do you actually deal with a panicked situation like that? Someone's basically calling, it's 911, you already hear it, it's being dispatched through. It's the worst case scenario that an officer does not want to hear, because that's a life. Now, how do y'all deal with something like that? And I know psychologically y'all have to go through a lot. But how do y'all actually incorporate everything, your skill sets, your mind, what you have to forget and just automatically execute? What are the things that are going through your mind when you have to respond to something like that?
I think officers' training is the key there. They're trained for those situations. They deal with them not on a regular basis, but they deal with them. So it's and of course it's far from routine, but I think once again the officer's mindset and the training aspect of it is what really comes in there. And obviously we have if it's, let's say we have a really difficult crime scene of some type, then we do have EAP resources available to our employees, and even the officers themselves. Working together in a peer support mode, that's a very valuable tool and should never be overlooked.
Would you be able to explain to the community on how the actual theft system works after detain and arrest?
So we'll use a fairly a common occurrence. Let's say we've had a shoplifting at any one of the local retailers. So we're called. The person, it's identified. They have property on them. They've exited the store. We have witnesses who are able to say that's the person. That's our property. We witnessed them concealing that in their purse or on their person. So we have a very clear, very very clear indicators that this is a theft. So that person. Depending on the value of the theft, they might be issued a citation or they'll be arrested. So if it's a value amount that requires an arrest, then that person will be arrested, taken to jail. At that point, they'll see a judge or a magistrate the following morning, and that judge would set a bond. And then, so the person will have the opportunity to bond out if they have the funds to do so. At which point, then they'll get set a court date. Of course, they'll appear before whichever court, depending on the dollar amount. Typically, that's going to be at a county court level, but appear before the county court and have a hearing, make their plea, make the decision as to how they're going to proceed. The longest term scenario would be one where they plead not guilty. and then that would wind up being set for trial. And then, of course, that engages the rest of the judicial process. So they would basically have a court date set, a jury selection or jury pool would be notified, go through the jury selection process, and then they'd go, have their trial, and the jury would make that determination as to guilt or innocence.
Chief Phillips, as long as you've been chief, what would be the positive message that you would want to tell your entire community about the theft and everything else that goes into it? What's the one message that you want to ensure the community of, and not just Gainesville, but the entire county of Cook County as well?
I think we're pretty fortunate here in Gainesville and in Cook County as well. We have our fair share of criminal activity, both normally and even during the holidays. We see that criminal activity, but percentage-wise, we're a very safe community. So we think our officers are out there on the street. They're working hard. They're working diligently. I know that Sheriff Gilbert, his deputies are out there doing the same thing out in the county, and so. We have a very, in my opinion, we have a very safe community. And I know I might be somewhat biased because of what because we hear what we do at the police department. But I think when we look at the numbers, we see crime has dropped. UCR Part 1 crimes, we've seen a drop in about 57% over the last 7 years, which is a pretty incredible drop in crime. I mean, you're looking at over 50% drop in UCR Part 1 crimes. So the officers are out there working hard. The judicial system is working hard, and we're doing our best to protect the community. And I think everyone ought to see that, and I hope everyone feels relatively safe on the streets, especially if they'll situational awareness, pay attention to what's going on, use some of the safety tips we've talked about, and of course the internet can be a wealth of information for those kinds of things. You just look up safety tips for whatever specific thing you're looking for. You can find a wealth of information there, but just use that, and in our community, it's a safe community.
Would it also be safe to say that the community is not just safe, but the officers themselves are very
we focus on customer service.
Okay.
At the Gainesville Police Department. We are in a customer service industry, and we recognize that. We have really good people. We are very careful and go through a very strenuous selection process. We're looking for the right people, and just because we have an opening doesn't mean we're going to select just anybody. We follow our criteria, and so we believe we find and select the best people for the position, and then we have a really good field training program that we go through and send our officers through so that they have a really good awareness of the philosophy of the department, not just the department, but the city in general. The city of Gainesville, very focused on customer service. And so we're simply just another component of that customer service. And I know sometimes people don't look at law enforcement necessarily as a customer service industry, but we are. Whether we're protecting, you or any member of the citizen from whatever may be going on, and sometimes we're protecting the person from themselves. But we are in a customer service industry, and we try to make sure our officers remember that.
With that being said, lastly, what type of customer service message would you want to direct to the thieves for this holiday season?
Just know that we're out there. Once again, our officers are working hard. They're out there in force. Like I said, our staffing levels are good. Situational awareness is good. So we're always watching. And once again, being that smaller community, that serves us in that aspect too. Some of the larger metropolitan areas, they may not have that time. Their call load may be so heavy that they're not able to respond to the smaller or what might be considered a lesser crime. That's not the case here. We answer every call every day, and so what someone might think, and they might think, well, that's not really a big deal. Well, maybe it is. Maybe this person's been involved in something else. So we go to every call. We'll take every report, and we look over those. So just know that we're out there, and we're watching, and we want everyone to enjoy the holidays, and that's really our goal. But if you choose to be one of those persons that wants to take advantage of other people, we are out there.
Well, Chief Phillips, thank you very much for addressing all your citizens in this community, and also not just for your citizens, but for surrounding counties as well. And I think that's a perfect example to be able to set forth for all citizens. So thank you very much for your time. Well, Cook County, you've heard it. And message to the bad guys.